All right. So this report, I think everyone, it was spoken about yesterday. This went out on Monday, but this is a crazy, crazy story happening out of Tim Hortons in Picton, Ontario. So that's just south of Belleville. And, it's a small, quaint little community. And there's damning allegations of the manager of this particular Tim Hortons exploiting vulnerable children, a 17-year-old girl, in an attempt to get her to participate and partake in not only marriage fraud, but immigration fraud to marry the manager's brother for $15,000 to $20,000 so that he can become a permanent resident. As I gather, he's just here on a temporary visa or under the temporary foreign worker program. And so I headed to this Tim Hortons. I went to this Tim Hortons over the weekend to interview the uncle of the young girl. He actually is more of a father figure to her. So he is really, he takes on that protector role for this young girl. And he's mad. I mean, rightfully so. But he is not letting this one go. And he's going to protect and advocate for his niece, who had to quit her job as a result of the treatment she received, not only by the manager, who made her feel extremely uncomfortable as a result of this proposition, but her coworkers and her other manager were even like, what's the big deal? Marry the brother. Maybe you'll like him. And then saying crazy things like, oh, well, we know 4 other people. We have all the text messages in that report. So if you're not sure what I'm talking about, or you're like, wait, this sounds too far-fetched, go and have a look, because they wrote it all out in text messages and they took screenshots of everything. They showed me everything. And so the other manager and the other coworker were saying things like, oh, we know 4 other people who have married foreigners, brought them into the country, and they've never even met before. And it's okay because no one calls the police. So no one knows that this is happening. And so this normalization of immigration fraud, marriage fraud, the exploitation of children, right? A 17-year-old is a minor, and in my opinion, still very much a child, who actually showed in this story more maturity than some of the adults she was reporting this back to. This is a crazy story, but I want to clear the air here, because what happened, and the report doesn't show everything, because then it would turn into like a 35-minute report, of course. So I went to the Tim Hortons. I wanted to give the employees working there an opportunity to refute the claim against them that the manager's offering $15,000 to $20,000 to her vulnerable minor employees to marry her brother, to bring him in to be a permanent resident. And so I went in, and I think I was in there in the Tim Hortons itself for maybe a minute and a half. I said, hey, I heard that I could start the process to have to marry the manager's brother and I would be paid $15,000 to $20,000. Can I start that process? That seems like, a hefty deal in today's economy. Who wouldn't want $15,000 to $20,000 if you're willing to disavow your ethics and morality? But anyway, so they said, oh, no comment, no comment. So obviously they're aware that this was happening, because they didn't say, what are you talking? Like, it was really weird the way that they said, oh, no, we don't have any comment about that. So they know that this is happening. And then so I left. I went outside. I interviewed the uncle. I chatted with some of the other protesters that were there, because there's some other strange happenings at this Tim Hortons where employees that have been there for, decades, in one instance, 16 years, so almost 2 decades, a manager, I believe she was a manager, was also fired for speaking up against some things that she was seeing happening under new management, if you catch my drift. And so I was talking to some other people outside on the street. And then I was actually just getting ready to head home, and the cops pull in, the OPP. So I thought, okay, this might be interesting. What's happening here? They came over, they spoke to the one protester who I guess had been trespassed from the property. I don't know, a couple of days prior, because his wife was one of the people who was fired for speaking up against some of the things happening at this same location. And so the police thought they were being called because this guy went into the Tim Hortons and broke that trespass order. So he said, no, I never went into the building. I don't know what this is about. And it was a big conversation. And so I followed the police into the Tim Hortons to see what it was about. Because they said, well, we're going to go in and see what this call is about, because this sounds a bit weird. And then let's just play the clip. This is what happened when I followed the police inside to figure out why they had been called.
The owner called, but he's not here. So he's claiming that that gentleman who was trespassed came into the store.
Not the gentleman, the lady.
What lady?
The one who's holding the...
Yeah.
Look, they're shocked, and so am I.
He said that no one, like, she's trespassing in the private property.
How is she trespassing?
Like, he was, like, standing in the lobby.
She's an independent journalist. She was never trespassed from this property, and she has her 100% rights to be here. Just because your boss doesn't like the fact that an independent journalist is in here video recording, that's not up to him. She has the right to do that.
I can call him and you can call.
I'm not going to, no. I'm not going to talk to him. You tell him that she has all the right to be here. I'm not going to entertain that. You tell that to Mohammed. I'm sorry if I'm being crass with you, but you relay that to Mohammed that I'm not even entertaining that portion of it, of this lady being here.
If any media is
It doesn't matter. They have all the rights in the world to do it.
Oopsie, you're not in India.
Right? And that's really what I think, and I can only assume that that's kind of what the officer, where he was headed with that. It was, you know what, this isn't wherever it is you come from. This is Canada. But you don't, right after he finished saying what he was saying there, he turns, you can kind of see he's already shifted his body because he's turning to walk out. The other officer follows him out, and then I follow out behind them. There was no confrontation. No one at any time asked me to leave. No one approached me, said, hey, oh, sorry. There was one other time after I finished interviewing the uncle, I went back in and I got some, we call it B-roll, some viz of the inside of the Tim Hortons. I just stood in the corner and I just went like this, and you'll see it in the report. I used that viz that I filmed for approximately 30 seconds. That was it. It was the only 2 times I was in that location. No one asked me to leave. There was not a confrontation. I didn't speak to anyone other than when I asked the cashier, hey, I heard I can marry the manager's brother. How do I start that process? They said no comment. I left. I wasn't a disturbance. I wasn't doing anything out of the realm of gathering some visuals for this report, which is based on an absolutely illegal happening, if true, of immigration fraud and marriage fraud. The police officer confirms for me out front. This was before we went inside, because when I saw them approach, I went up and I said, hey, these are crazy allegations coming out of this Tim Hortons. Are you aware of this? And is there an investigation? He confirms to me, yes, there's an investigation into this. So the fact that people in the comments, because this clip went viral, right? Because we're so used to being treated unfairly by police. And so when you see a good cop standing up for what is just and what is right, it went viral and people were, thank you, finally. And it really restored my faith in on the ground policing. I was shocked. My jaw almost hit the floor when he said, for her, she has every right to be here. You haven't trespassed her from the property. And it's true. They hadn't. No one had spoken to me. A prerequisite of the Trespassed Property Act is that the person has to be asked to leave and they have to refuse to comply. And then that warrants further escalation. Otherwise, what? I'm supposed to just telepathically know that the manager wasn't comfortable with my filming there and that I had to leave? People are unhinged in the comments who think that this officer was out of the realm of what is lawful or legal. He 100% was right, because no one had asked me to leave. I wasn't a disturbance. No one had spoken to me. I'm not a mind reader that knows Mohammed is uncomfortable from afar with my recording. He has that place cammed up to the nines. He can go back and look at those videotapes and the recordings. I have my own, where no one approached me at all. I didn't cause a disturbance. No one spoke to me. Nothing was wrong. I collected some visuals from my report and I went on my merry way. In fact, if Mohammed hadn't have called the police, I would have been gone. That interaction would have never happened. And I would have never followed the police back in there to see what they were called there about, because they thought they were called there for the other guy who was trespassed, allegedly, who they thought had come back into the property. And when they found out that he hadn't, they said, well, let's go see what this is about. And then all of a sudden, we all come to find out at the same time, it's about me. And the cops obviously are fed up with this location. This is what I gathered from the way that he approached it. They're fed up playing personal security for this Tim Hortons, who's obviously being investigated for some serious criminal allegations happening and taking place at this location. And they're fed up and they're frustrated. In fact, on my way out of Prince Edward County, I saw that same police officer responding to a car accident on the side of the road. And I thought to myself, that's what the police should be doing. They shouldn't be being called to run cover for a manager or a franchisee owner of Tim Hortons when they're uncomfortable with an investigation going on about their location, exploiting vulnerable children for immigration fraud. So anyone in the comments who's more caught up with the fact that I'm allegedly trespassing, which I should have, I guess, telepathically been privy to, and not the fact that Tim Hortons is now being used allegedly as a cover for immigration fraud happening right under everyone's noses, shows you the state of affairs and the lack of critical thinking and intelligence of your average Canadian, because they've got their priorities way backwards and way mixed up if that's what they think the real problem is here. That officer was right. He was justified. He used his discretion. And I hope he gets a raise, because I was so pleasantly surprised and refreshed by his remarks at that Tim Hortons.
By the way, first of all, this whole story is utterly disgusting, but thanks God there is still a good cop who are doing their job and they are standing up for freedom of the press and freedom of free speech, actually. But what disgusts me the most is the company, Tim Horton. You know, I'm Tim Horton children. They helped me a lot. They helped a lot of children in the past, actually, who had only one parent, who were struggling a little bit to send children on a summer camp. And to see that now they have let this company turning into a joke, a real joke, where we are saying that it's not Tim Horton anymore. And probably the real Tim Horton probably turned into his freaking grave to see what is happening right now, because he was standing for children. He was standing for vulnerable people. People were struggling, especially like when you had only one parent. He wanted to help them. He wanted this company to be Canadian. And now the company is just turning in everything that what Tim Horton were standing for.
Yeah, 100%. And the guy, the uncle, Matt Monroe, who I interviewed about his niece them attempting to exploit his niece for permanent residency gain, he says exactly that. He says, what a devastation to the legacy of Tim Horton and everything that he stood for. And I think that is the saddest part for many Canadians, where, you know, we're used to Tim Hortons. I mean, I played hockey when I was younger, and Tim Hortons was such a staple at the arena. You know, it was like the good old hockey game and Tim Hortons. They go hand in hand. They'd be running early in the morning on your way to those early morning games or practices, tournaments, late nights. You could always depend on Timmy's to be open and ready to serve you. And the state of affairs of Tim Hortons now compared to even just 5-10 years ago it's a shell of what it used to be and the legacy and the heritage that it embodied. It's so sad to see. But another thing I just want to point out, we'll move along because I know this was chatted about yesterday, is that that police officer that responded, and I do have his name, and I don't want to see him get in trouble, so I haven't published his name. because a lot of people are thinking that he's in the wrong here. And I just wanted to correct the record that no, in fact, he is not. I was not trespassed from this property. I did not cause a disturbance. No one said anything to me unless I'm supposed to be some sort of magic tarot card mind reader, telepathically getting messages from the owner or the management or anyone that I should have left. He 100% did the right thing. And I did reach out to Tim Hortons with some of these damning allegations. They're corporate. Their media responses featured approximately 11 minutes and 23 seconds to be exact, into that report. And so if you want to see how Tim Hortons responds to this, I think it is very telling. And that's about all. This has been picked up by so many people on X, on other social media, on other web pages. It has gone viral. And one person who says that this cop is giving major red flags is none other than TikTok, self-proclaimed TikTok star Rachel Gilmore, saying, and Rachel Gilmore is really this perpetual cry bully. And I reposted this and I say, perpetual cry bully Rachel Gilmore, who can't hold down a job in journalism, by the way. She's always about women's rights and intimidation and violence against women and hate against journalists. And she screams all of these things and talks to the House committees about journalism in light, in the era of hate and bigotry and transphobia and all the buzzwords. Rachel Gilmore just lives and thrives on them. And yet you have a vulnerable minor child, young girl, being exploited by potential marriage and immigration fraud. If those text messages are any evidence, I would say it's pretty clear: marriage and immigration fraud. And instead of focusing on that and denouncing that kind of disgusting, disturbing behavior, Rachel Gilmore focuses on the way this cop is speaking to the workers at a time of rising anti-Indian racism, while repeatedly, almost reverently, calling Rebel News independent journalists, despite a court ruling that they don't qualify as such, as though judges determine who is and isn't a journalist. Mm-hmm. And she says it's giving major red flags. Yeah. Well, Rachel Gilmore, the story is actually about the sexual exploitation of a child. And so maybe you should look a little bit more into that, because that is the only thing in this story that's giving major red flags. That police officer says, he was so Canadian about his whole approach. He's like, I'm sorry if I'm being crass. Like, that is the ultimate Canadian thing to say. I'm sorry, right? And but they're obviously fed up. These police are being taken away from real police work to run cover and private security for a Tim Hortons that is being investigated for serious allegations of immigration and marriage fraud. So Rachel Gilmore, once again, priorities a little bit backwards.